Okay, so I'm going to have a third attempt at answering these comments from the most recent video. Okay, so Sue Sullivan says, I'm sorry it's pain right now and I hope the fix goes smoothly. Thank you. I continue to appreciate all your videos. I especially appreciate your naming that whatever is here in this moment is both undoubtable and utterly mysterious. Some thoughts have persisted that if it is mysterious, there must be some doubt about it. And those two descriptions are not contradictory, I see now. Yeah, so becoming comfortable with the paradox of non-duality or reality is something that the mind can't do. So it's a freeing realization to recognize that it doesn't have to be one way or the other. And the beauty in this is that it's both and neither. It's been hard to let go of knowing. Being the one who knows is deep conditioning for me. But it's also undeniably clear that it's absurd to claim to know anything. For multiple reasons, and also thank you for saying that there is no need to know. What a freaking relief. I spent way too much time and life energy trying to know what's going on, what might go on, what's happened, what's right or wrong, and all the other nonsense. Yeah, it's all mind chatter, isn't it? My thoughts tell me that I'm becoming a really boring person to talk to, because I don't want to have opinions or talk about what seems to be happening much anymore. But then I notice ideas will pop out of my mouth that are actually pretty fascinating, and not just because I have no idea where they came from. So yeah, it comes with a bit of adjustment in that there's lesser inclination to engage in heavily identity-driven topics of relating and or conversation or drama and all that stuff is not appealing anymore, and that kind of comes with a bit of an adjustment, and might have to sacrifice some of the relationships that were driven by the drama or the building. The rapport the bonding was built through strong identification or opposition to something, or drama or stuff like that. But if someone finds you boring, then who is it that's feeling the boredom? Certainly not you. So thanks for the comment. Jared Carlson Ripple says, thank you David, I've watched this about 3 times already. I was thinking about when you said once you recognised that this reaction wasn't you, then it seemed to calm down. That got me thinking, why didn't mine calm down once I experienced that? Yeah. I believe it's because I don't feel like I'm prepared to accept that, and that I want to prepare myself as much as I can before I accept. I feel as though there's no amount of preparation that will get me ready to accept that I'm already ready to accept. Yeah, you can't prepare for this at all, so you can just let go of that. And it was just an idea that I wasn't ready. Yeah, like I feel like there will be some loose ends or something when I accept, and that I think that might be why I haven't yet. All the loose ends are gone though. There was never any loose ends to begin with. I think loose ends are just more ideas, maybe. Yeah, just thoughts. But it's crazy to me that even though I'm breaking this all down for myself. I feel this pressure that I'm still not ready and I need to do more preparation. Where am I? Maybe because I believed that I could think my way to this, so that I could never lose this feeling how I lost my ego, and I was wrong. So now I'm just stuck in this loophole until I accept that I was wrong. I'm not 100% sure, but I do remember this fear and feeling like I was in a desert or an ocean with nothing to hold on to except my old character. I was scared I remember, but suffering did lose meaning within myself, and I did see life without suffering, but I didn't know what to do with it or if it was an illusion, because it seemed too good to be true. It seemed so good that I labelled it as an illusion, but now I've come full circle and I'm now saying that it wasn't an illusion and what I was holding on to was the illusion. Let me know your... So, I just can't seem to float in the ocean. Let me know what you think. So, now that there's been, this recognition has begun to express itself, but what happens is that you're kind of answering your own question there, because you're saying that these are ideas, these are the thoughts, illusion. So there's a reduction in the belief in the reality of thoughts, reality of my thoughts about what I need to do and so on, but nothing can prepare you for this. And the thoughts, obviously the thoughts that are saying that I need to prepare myself before this something else that's going to happen in the future are just, it's like a defense mechanism for the sense of separate self, which is why it's helpful when thoughts get messy and it seems confusing, or that to focus on something simple. Focus on the felt sense of you, focus on the feeling, the energetics of it, how it feels, rather than getting caught up in the messiness of thought. For example, what is the energetic feeling behind that? These thoughts that seem to spring from a feeling of needing to do something, of urgency, of preparing for something, of something else in the future, of trying to figure it out, or trying to label things an illusion or not an illusion, or trying to qualify experience as enlightened or not, and so on and so on. What is the felt energetic feeling behind all those thoughts that they seem to be inspired by? And just go directly to that. When that doubt, when that sense of self that is formulated, let's say, in feelings and thoughts of doubt is starting to lose its reality to be seen through, often what happens is, because that's the sense of self holding on to and insisting upon its own reality, its own realness in thought, in separation, you get what you described as the feeling of fear, the feeling of being lost, being immersed in some unknowable ocean of incomprehensibility that is scary, and that the fear comes up to it expresses, and it needs to express, but what makes it tricky is the thoughts about it, how I relate to this, how this experience that I'm having is mine, and I relate to it by valuing it in these ways. Is it right? Do I need to prepare, and so on? Go to the feeling, go to the fear, go to the doubt. What does it feel like? And then compare that to the moments of clarity that you've had, of simplicity, where things seem easy, simple, peaceful, and notice what is the difference. Without being too complicated about it, what is the difference in the felt experience of me just go to the sensation, go to the fear, go to the energetics of it. How does it feel? Focus on the feeling and watch for the thoughts. Don't grab on to the thoughts. Don't follow the cycle of thoughts that insist upon me trying to figure this out. Just go to the feeling. Keep going back to the feeling. Keep going back to what's simple. It's a movement away from this. A movement away from peace that is inherent. A movement away from simplicity into the suggestion of I need to do something. That urgency of finding something else that's not this. If that makes sense. Just keep it as simple as possible. It's much more of a letting go, an acceptance, a relaxing. You mentioned acceptance a lot. Intuitively, at some level, we know what that is. But what seems to prevent that is something being added to in thought, an identity, an act of creation of a character. Whereas the acceptance is inherent in reality, the freedom is inherent in reality. It's this act of creation of a thought-based entity that resists this. That's always happening right now in one thought. Just look at the one thought, go to the feeling, and watch for that one movement of mind that seems to add to, obscure, and take us away from immediacy into the suggestion of a real something else that I need to get to in the future. But let me know how you get on. Where are we here? One party relay says if you feel like trying something unconventional for healing the body, you could try a visualization technique that may well have helped me heal an old yoga injury a few years ago. If this technique didn't help, it was a bloody big coincidence that it disappeared after 2 visualizations because I had the pain for years and was doing nothing else to try and heal it. I learned a technique from YouTube from a guy called Rob's Reality. The video is called How to Heal Your Body Using Your Mind. Basic description: you meditate for a bit, imagine you're watching your body and imagine it has transparency. You visualize the pain injury as a coloured light and imagine you're breathing in a different colour of light to the injury site and breathe out the pain injury colour. And you're breathing in the healing colour, I imagine. I've practiced visualization techniques similar to that previously, and I actually found them to be very helpful. Like when I was into my training a bit more, I would use a lot of visualization techniques for preparation, and I believe I've done something similar to this before. But yeah, I'll try that. Thank you for the suggestion. I'll let you know how it goes. So bees us my honey. Bees us my honey. Is that a Scottish thing? Ask what is attention. When I am sitting, I seem to equate presence as my attention, being open to all my 5 senses, being open to everything outside of me, whilst also feeling the energy inside my body. I will sometimes come to randomly and realise I was lost in thought and cannot find where that initially happened. It's a disheartening feeling. I guess I'm still looking for some sense of a me, and the mistake attention is who I am, but I have no control of attention. Yeah, so you clearly have some clarity there, recognising when you're lost in thought. You can't quite pinpoint when you became lost in that cycle of identified thinking, and then you snap out of it. You kind of come to, like you put it, and you recognise, oh, I'm lost in thought. And it has a very expanding out of contracted state feeling, a very waking up feeling, a very freeing feeling. until the other thoughts come and say, oh, I shouldn't be lost in thought, and then we start struggling with with thought. So it's the other layer of it comes full circle. But that's the whole thing summarized. You recognize you're fully identified. You recognize it. You almost take a step out of that continual rolling on of the mind and wake up, expand out of it, and you realize, oh, I was lost in thought. I mean, there is a me realizing that. The next step would be coming to out of that me that recognizes that. That's essentially the whole thing. Easier said than done, but very simple. I would describe attention as just a thought model, as a limitation of awareness or consciousness or reality. I think you described it quite well. Whereas what I always talk about is initially like a dilation and expansion of that focused attention. Like, for example, if you put your attention to your left foot and then your right hand and then your left hand and then your head, you know, it seems like the sensation becomes more obvious, more intense. It almost seems like the sensation wasn't there before, but of course it was. We just weren't focusing on it, and it seems to be like an augmentation of the mind. The mind augments a kind of thought version of reality onto this, whatever this is, to limit it and make it a personal experience of subject object, of me here observing that object there, or this sensation here, or that sound over there. It's just a thought. Throughout this inquiry process or practice or meditation, tends to happen, what happened to me, is there is a dilation of that and a softening of that attention, the softening of the borders, the boundaries of the constriction, the restriction, the focus of personal awareness, and there's a relaxation out into something that is essentially undefinable, unlocatable, mysterious, timeless, without dimension or space or time. With that, there's a relaxation, a kind of relaxing of tension, such that all of the tense, focused energy that was creating this illusion of me inside this body and the world out there, and all these objects and relations and so on, it softens such that you become undefinable. Your definitions as a character become lesser and lesser, and then there's a point of recognition. With that recognition comes a cessation of a lot of the functions of that augmentation, that categorization, the positions and so on. Then it gets really hard to talk about after that. But at the root of all that is the sense of separateness, the idea of separateness. When we start to see through these thought structures or filters of perceptual filters, they lose their hardness, they lose their reality, their sense of being real as being the primary reality, and then the mind can still function with that augmentation, of course, but it's not taken to be real, and with that, a huge release of tension seems to happen in the body and the mind. I guess that's how I would describe my experience with it. But you just keep noticing the thought. When you notice you're lost in thought, notice that, and then just watch what will be the next thought and what's it talking about, what's it suggesting, what's its suggested reality about how this is and what I am or who I am and how I relate to this and so on. Just keep being more and more clear on that. Consciously at first there seems to be some effort to it, and then after a while it just takes on a life of its own, and it's much easier to relax into the infinite, relax into just this without moving away from it or categorizing it or restricting it all the time. That's what I would say to that. How are we doing for time? So Steve, 672 says, thanks David, I was thinking today about the truth and the search for truth, and it seems that there's two truths going on here. The relative truth that I exist, that I have a life, past and a future, I have likes, dislikes, goals, achievements, failures, I have family, friends. All of this is a relative truth. It's only relative in relation to me. Everyone has their own relative truth, their own life, which is just a relative truth. The thing about this is that relative truth is that it only exists in the realm of thought, the mind. We take all of it to be real, but when we look closely at it, it has no concrete reality. It exists only in the mind as a thought. Then there is the ultimate or absolute truth. This is the non-dual. This is non-dual, and it is everything that the relative truth is not. We discover that there is no me, and that the me is only made up of thoughts, memories. There is no time, and there's only now. There only ever will be now. All there is this, and this is one happening. As all of these sorry, I just lost it there. As all of these relative truths, one happening has all of these relative truths. Anyway, that's about it, mate. Just wanted to share my thoughts with you. Hope you're feeling better soon. Yeah, that sounds great. I would just maybe add to that of course this is recognised experientially, and the descriptions of it are only kind of a vague way of talking about it. They are kind of useful in the relative, but the relative and the absolute aren't separate, aren't two things, as in the relative truth and the absolute truth are inseparable, are the same thing, such that there isn't, at a certain point, there isn't even a need for a distinction between the two, although the distinction can be useful for a while. The mind tends to reconfigure itself to more expanded level of understanding for a while, until it stops being able to, or it's not necessary for the mind to reconfigure and recontextualize. Like, for example, it reconfigures itself to seemingly understand the spiritual contexts. Even the recognition will happen, and the mind reconfigures itself to explain it in a conceptual way that makes sense to a me. And then after a while that stops making sense, and it can all just be let go of, and then there's not really anything you can say about it. But I think that's a very good take on it. Okay. Mary Rose Mitchell says, is judgment and criticism no longer attached or sticking there? Any attachment to preferences? When one does not wish to engage with a certain type of energy, whether it be as appearing as a spider or a manipulative person, is that a preference or just what's happening? Is it all just apparent phenomena arising, including thoughts, feelings and preferences, but for nobody? So that honestly, that the kind of question doesn't really make any sense to me, because it's so conceptual. You know, I guess you could say personally it'd be my preference to not think to the extent of answering that question, because you kind of have to conceptually create answers that might seem relevant, but to me that's completely fictional. And not to say it's not interesting, but to me that's completely fictional and not that interesting personally. I guess you could say that's a preference. I can't say for sure that I can't really confirm any of that, to be honest. Judgment or criticism. Judgment and criticism as a function is perfectly fine. If you're talking as in like a emotional trigger, like a narrative trigger as it relates to a me that has its own values, those values might be threatened by a judgment or criticism, then at the felt real emotional level, then I wouldn't say that's problematic. As a function, as a practical thought function, then yeah, judgment and criticism can still function perfectly fine. Attachment to preferences. Yeah, there are preferences for sure. Yeah, just as a personality trait or objective function of thought. But again, I don't feel like that's problematic, at least in my case anyway. Not engaging with a type of energy. Yeah, you can feel quite immediately that energy. You know, you get like vibes off people. You feel that more, like almost like a signal in the body, a signal to the body or in the environment that's resonated with. So I guess there's more of an aversion to those energies that you wouldn't want to be around, and like a natural movement away from that, I suppose, and more of an affinity to something that's going to be peaceful, or I guess enjoyable for the body, or comfortable for the body, just as a kind of natural movement, I suppose. Not a fan of spiders. So I don't know if it's a preference or just what's happening. I suppose it could be both. Is it all just apparent phenomena arising, including thoughts, feelings and preferences, but for nobody? In terms of like for nobody, that's not something that's possible to understand from a personal position, so it wouldn't really be that relevant to talk about it and give you a satisfying answer that you could understand from a personal position, if that makes sense. But yeah, apparent phenomena arising, including thoughts, feelings. Yeah, there's more of a flow with, when there's no thought narrative, there's more of a flow with what's happening, rather than an insistence that what's happening go a certain way for me. if that's what you're meaning. But all of that's very conceptual. What I tend, well, at least I hope I do, to try and point towards is what's non-conceptual, what doesn't need to be thought about or preempted with a conceptual understanding, because the conceptual understanding does you no good, pretty much. It's much more simple than that. Much more simple than that. Such that, you know, this recognition, life, living, let's say the implications of this recognition is so simple, so peaceful, that the conceptual explanations or attempts to understand it conceptually or cognitively lose their interest completely, because what's here is so overt and fascinating and real in comparison to the conceptual versions. I know we're bound to use concepts here, especially through a medium like this, so I do make the effort to answer conceptual questions if that seems relevant for whoever's asking. But ultimately, this is not something that has anything to do with concepts or qualities of, like, value, qualities of experience. Like, this experience is like this or like that in comparison to this. It's just what it is. It's just so obvious this is what it is, but it's also obvious that it's no certain way, no particular way at all. No no way that can never be comprehended in the conceptual sense. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go, but I think that's all the comments. That'll do for now, and I'll talk to you next time.